My presentation today is all about building team resilience. And I guess this kind of links to a couple of things that have already been said. Tom was talking about the fact that before we went into the virtual world, the Nexus environment was this lovely building. And for a lot of us, the physicality of work has changed, hasn't it? Because we're working at home and all that kind of thing. So there's something about, well, how has resilience been affected by this change? Somebody said to me the other day, it's almost as if everybody's had to get a new job in the last year. And in a way, that's one way of looking at it, that we've all had to adopt and adapt to new ways of working. And there's also something in here about the fact that all of our environments at home, if we're working at home, are different. And so team resilience is very much about individual resilience combined. So if everybody in your team can have that resilience, then they can move forward. So there's something today about the fact that resilience is a combination of all of the people in the team. And what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk a little bit about centering. We're going to start with some centering today, because part of resilience is about balance. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how, in my role at the university, we've been helping teams to build resilience and change readiness. And then we're going to look at some definitions of team resilience. What does it actually mean? And then a model for you to think about and some takeaways. And very much it's an interactive session. So I've got my chat box up all the time. If you want to throw questions at me as we go through, that's absolutely fine. And there will be times when I ask you as a group to tell me what you think. And this is really important as well. So the first thing to do is just to do a little bit of centering together. Resilience is very much about being present. Becky was talking about mindfulness. If we are in the present moment, then we can make better decisions. We can notice those emotions that Becky was talking about, and we can work with them. So if you can just find yourself a really comfy position on your seat, if you want to turn your cameras off, you can do that as well. I'm going to leave mine on. And just get yourself in a position where your feet are nice and stable on the floor. And just get that sense of certainty underneath your feet and that lovely feeling of being supported by your chair, whatever you're sitting on. And if you want to shut your eyes, that's fine. If you want to put your eyes in soft focus, that's absolutely fine as well. And just take a few minutes just to arrive and just to sense whatever it is that's going on in your body right now. And take a few breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. And in through your nose and out through your mouth. And just take your attention down to your feet, wiggle your toes around. Just get that sense of your feet in, well, I'm in slippers today. I don't know whether you're in shoes, but whatever you've got on your feet. So whatever that feels like. And then just take your attention up your legs to your knees. Just see what experiences and feelings are there for you. And then just take your attention along your legs to your lower back and just feel the chair supporting you. And perhaps you've got your hands in your lap or on your thighs. Just get that sense of being here. And just notice any tension in your jaw, let that go. Any tension in your shoulders, have a bit of a wiggle. And just allow that to dissipate as well. And just take a few breaths to fully arrive in this space. That's great. And if you want to turn your cameras back on, that's absolutely fine. If you don't, that's great. So there's something in here about the fact that resilience is about balance, and working from home, working remotely, this can trigger our parasympathetic nervous system if we work it well in terms of relaxation. If we don't do that, then we can be staring completely at the screen all the time, which makes us feel more tense. So as the day goes on, we'll get more and more tense unless we work against it. So there's something about allowing ourselves to down regulate and helping your staff to understand that back-to-back Zoom meetings isn't going to be the best way of working in terms of productivity. And a lot of the work I've done at the university has been team orientated. So 19 sessions over the last 9 months, 292 staff have come through these sessions to think about, right, what has the experience been like of working remotely, and how is it affecting our ability to take on board pressures and to manage them effectively? And it's a very individual story. So everybody that we talk to has a new and different way of explaining things. But what we try and do is we try and normalize people's experiences, and we try and share stories. And stories are very diverse, from homeschooling right through to elderly parents and the worries and all the rest of it, in terms of, this is my domestic context that's impacting on my ability to do my job. And so it's really important as leaders that we're aware that everybody's circumstances are different, and helping people to be resilient in these times is giving them the opportunity to share the challenges that they're facing and experiencing. So very much the work I've done is around getting teams to talk more, to open up, and to explore the things that are going to help them to do a great job, even though we're working remotely and in different ways. So let's just have a think about the what is resilience itself, and what do resilient teams do? So if you could just go to chat now, so have a think, either examples that you've seen on the TV or you've heard about. What do you think a resilient team looks like? What do they do, these people? And you can think of it from all kinds of different approaches, can't you, in terms of work teams, sports teams. What does resilience mean, do you think? Brilliant, thank you. So we've got something about adaptation, yeah, adapting to change. So there's something about being agile, isn't there, and responsive. There's something about problem solving collectively. Thank you for that. There's something about honesty, sharing, and openness, in terms of, right, this is actually what I'm experiencing. How does it feel for you? So there's something about encouraging teams to be open. Alan's talking about working together to overcome challenges in a positive way. So there's something in here, isn't there, about the collective but individual nature of getting ready for change. There's something about support. There's something about, thank you, Nick's talking about having one another's back. So if you know that you're going out on a limb, sometimes you know that the office and your colleagues will be there to support you. Rachel's talking about responding positively to challenges, solution orientated. So almost like a positive mindset, looking for the silver lining in the cloud, or the last thing anybody wants to do is to look to the end of a book to see what happens on the last page. You know, there is an excitement in the unknown if we can just view it from that point of view. Although I did say that on a course a week ago, and somebody said, actually, I do read the last page of a book, which was interesting. So everybody has a different way of doing it, don't we? Support, responding positively, being respectful of one another. So are you creating environments in which people can do these things? Listening to one another, Danny says, really important to find one another's reality, having more empowerment to be flexible. So it's not about hours anymore, it's about outcomes. So that's a really good point, isn't it? Something in there about the fact that we want to be focused on our productivity. And if we can be focused, then people will hopefully buy into this. So a definition of team resilience is that it's about a team's ability to absorb, and it's about coping with and recovering from the pressures, the challenges, and the adversity. So there's three different bits there, isn't there? The absorbing piece, the coping with, and the recovering, almost like the bouncing back. And this links to what Becky was talking about earlier on, because it's very much about self-awareness. So in terms of, perhaps more than ever with your teams, it's about encouraging people to look at themselves and to think, right, you know, what am I doing that works well? What are the strategies that we can share? How can we recover? How can we talk? So, for example, one of the things that helps counsellors who have lots of different sessions in a day. They'll have supervision to talk about how has that felt for you. Team meetings aren't just an example or an opportunity to look forward. They're a chance to reflect on how has it been, and can we celebrate how well we've actually put up with the pressures in the last week. So there's something about noticing how well we are moving, how well we've coped, as well as how well we're going to cope in the future. But of course, with the pandemic and with working at home and other pressures, whether it's competitive pressures, so a lot of retail is looking to move online, for example, a lot of research is having to be reconstituted so it's done remotely rather than in the lab. What do you think stops teams from being resilient? So we're saying those are the things we need to be. We need to be able to absorb it, cope with it, bounce back. But in your organization, or what do you think generally stops people in teams from being resilient? Just go to the chat box again and just put in some of your thoughts and ideas. Thank you, Paul. So there's something in here about a lack of connection, right? So can you see how your part of the jigsaw attaches to the bigger piece? So something about the motivation, something about reward, Jennifer's talking about, or celebration. Yes, I've heard stories about people who feel that their boss needs to congratulate them more just for doing the job, because having a mask on in a shop makes it more difficult. Having to put up with weird behavior from the general public or the client because they're angry or upset because of timescales being hit means that we need to try and focus in on the things that have been successful, don't we? Somebody saying not having time to reflect and acknowledge. So there's something in there, isn't there, about building in time to actually look back, like I said, in terms of, right, what's going well, because if we don't do that, we won't learn as well. And there's nothing more demotivating than continual problems that aren't sorted out. Jennifer's talking about poor communication. Rachel's talking about not being able to share and connect. Somebody the other day said, I don't like the phrase remote working because it reminds me that I feel remote from people. And of course, we're very social animals, aren't we? We want that connectivity. And some of us get our energy from other people. So there's something about you as a leader and teams creating opportunities to share, to connect, to chat, and to chew the cud in a way, isn't it? Danny's talking about poor relationships. Actually, this is really interesting, isn't it? Because relationships can be affected in lots of ways through adversity. So I've got closer to some colleagues when we've come through the other side of something that was very difficult. I once worked in a team where the boss put me and a colleague together. We really didn't get on, but he put us on a project, and by the end of it, we could see where we were both coming from. Jennifer's talking about excessive workload, unrealistic deadlines. With furlough or with redundancy, what tends to happen is we have the same targets but less people. So there's something about acknowledging the fact that we're asking sometimes for more from the same group. And other points there, not helping people, not working as a team, accepting lower quality work. And of course, one of your challenges is to make sure that the quality of what you do doesn't slip. So let's have a look at a model now in terms of resilience. So this is a Robertson Cooper model. I like this model because it gives us 4 different domains in which to focus our efforts. So confidence, social support, adaptability, and purposefulness. Confidence, if we're confident, then we are able to withstand the pressures. We can bounce back. We remind ourselves that we are competent. We remind ourselves that we are good at our jobs, and we tend to take things less personally then, because we know that a lot of the things that are happening are actually due to us. So there's something about recognizing strengths. There's something about attributing and giving credit and feedback. There's something about challenge and mastering, continually learning new things. So get your team members to be learning all the time. Even if it's social learning, hobby learning is just as important as work learning at the moment, because it keeps us stimulated. It can give us focus. I've heard stories of people learning new languages and new instruments because of the flexible working practice, which means they can do that around their jobs. Social support, really important. And I think the comment came out about, has somebody got your back? So there's something about, do you feel part of something? Have you got an effective network where you can go to people for different things, to talk about your feelings, to talk about your work? Are you appreciated as a leader? Do you go around your team virtually and say thank you for the work you're doing? Are you building good relationships in a proactive way? And it can feel difficult, especially remotely, can't it, to set up these meetings, but it really pays dividends in terms of our resilience. Adaptability, sometimes we feel that we're in a corner, and that can feel very stressful. So what we need to do is to develop strategies which allow us to be adaptable. So that's about resilient thinking, so looking for the positives. It's about watching out for cognitive distortion, so that might be the cataclysmic or the catastrophic thinking that Becky was talking about. Noticing when we're doing that, reminding each other, talking about these things. Mindfulness is a great way to down regulate, so not having back-to-back meetings. Resilience is about keeping in balance as the day unfolds, and focusing on what is possible. So in the old days, we used to be able to say, oh, it's probably going to be like this. But nowadays, we have to say, well, what is possible? What is in my gift? What is a team? What's in our control? And then purposefulness has come out in some of the comments around clear goals, clear targets. Sometimes it's as basic as going back to, why did we set this business up? What is this department to do? Can we share what it is that we're going to be measured on? What are our common values? And then also there's something about a personal moral compass here, isn't there, in terms of us wanting to do well. And of course that goes back partly to your recruitment of people, but it also goes back to how you manage it when people are unethical in your organization, or they talk about things which are probably not acceptable to you. So it's coming back to your purposefulness and your conscience as an organization. And it's also giving people the opportunity to check. And what could you do better than actually saying to people on a regular basis, check and ask and verify that you know exactly what's required of you. Morale is a really ephemeral thing, isn't it? It can go up and down. Mine does, day to day, depends on what's happening. There's something in here about noticing when your team members are struggling and putting in place ways to help people back and give them support when it's needed. Did anybody have any questions at that point about anything I've said there? Please just go into chat or come on the microphone. Rachel's got a question. Is that on morale, Rachel? Yeah. How do you create consistency? Yeah, it's an interesting one. Yeah, it is a roller coaster. Some people call it the corona coaster, don't they, in terms of the virus and how it can really be up and down. I think there's a couple of things in here. One is the fact that it will be up and down, and to almost acknowledge that consistency actually comes from noticing when we lose our balance, if that makes sense. So it's about saying, right, how can we as a group of people come back into this workable, this okay place? And some of that is about noticing one another's dips in motivation. It's asking the question also, isn't it, in terms of how are you feeling today? What's your engagement like? That kind of thing. And Jennifer's point there about morals is important and what behaviors are exemplar. Yes, I think it's about best practice, isn't it? It's about saying, what are we aspiring to be like? And as a leader, that means you have to lead by example, isn't it? In being scrupulously honest with your word, being fair in the way that you treat people. And that can make it quite difficult. Nick, thank you very much. Good to have you along. Alan's talking about, do you have any real life examples of team morale being negatively affected by remote working and specific tips? Well, I think the thing about this is that everybody is different. And so the examples I would give you are around the fact that morale links to engagement. So the real life examples are around, for example, people who came in to do this job, and because of the virus, they've ended up doing something different. And what's tended to happen then is that they are scratching their heads thinking, this isn't what I signed up for. I came in to work with students and I'm having to do a lot of admin or that kind of thing. So there's something in here about being able to talk about it. So teams who work effectively and become more resilient have this ability to share and be honest about these things. There's something also I think about role slip or role creep, that we end up doing more and more things, and that can affect our morale. So, the things I really love, I used to do 80% of the time, and now I do them 20% of the time. So there's something about continually reviewing people's roles and looking for ways to give roles to people who have that skills set. So there's a continual kind of evolution of your team in terms of, right, we need this doing, who's the best person to do that, if that makes sense. But it's a good question, Alan. Yeah, thank you. Any other
Marcus,
questions?
sorry, Danny has his hand up. Danny, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not going to type in very quickly, so I thought I'd ask the question anyway, Marcus, if that's okay.
Cool.
I'm thinking about the model and the purposefulness bit, and would you say that included optimism and hope? The reason I ask is because I was having a conversation yesterday with a friend, and we both kind of agreed that one of the challenges with the current state of lockdown is there's no light at the end of the tunnel that we can kind of focus on. And it just feels like a sort of long black hole at the moment. It does to me anyway. And I think for my own personal resilience, seeing where I might, get out of this would help me to kind of just keep sort of trudging along. I don't know if we link to that particular one.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think it's about finding success in different ways. It's about being adaptable in the way that we view what is success. So sometimes we have to shorten our time scale. So instead of saying, right, in a year's time we're going to have done this big project, let's break it down and say, right, let's create reward systems for the components, the chunking of things. So it's important to reward small successes as well as the bigger successes. I think it's also, building on what you're saying there, it's about acknowledging that it's difficult. And it's about encouraging people to look for the things that will motivate them and will get them through this particular bit. I think you might have used the word hope there. I think, where does the hope come from in your organization? And that could be about numbers, statistics, new clients, new website. The things that are inside your control are the best ones to aim for. So that could be around clarification, improvement of your web presence. It could be something around new collaborations where you seek people. So I guess there's something in there, Danny, around celebrating success. And I think there's something in there around reward systems, I think. Good question. Thank you very much. Good. So I just wanted to give you some key takeaways from the talk today, and hopefully you've got some of your own ideas as well. But number one, expect these fluctuations in morale and energy, you included, and talk about this with your team. Create communication channels to allow staff members to check their expectations. and to feed back their issues. And that could well be that you have a buddy system where people work together, they check in with one another. It could be that you have more of a sort of rotating system to allow different people to get to know different members of the team who don't normally work together. Spend time listening. This is the time for you to actually spend time listening and responding to changing needs, almost as being a coordinator and an enabler. Planning activities which enable team members to build relationships with one another. So those coffee mornings, those themed meetings, which are built on the kind of things that people talk about. So if people are saying all the time, you know, we don't know much about the German market and we should do, then invite a guest speaker in to talk about what German business looks like and that sector and how you're going to get into it. So be proactive in the way that you build activities and encourage ongoing learning. So all the time, you and the team be building knowledge, skills, because that's exciting in its own right if it's something that it motivates and excites people. And then also the last piece is around authenticity. So you being a role model for others, if it's difficult, saying it's difficult, sharing your resilience strategies, sharing the slides from this presentation with them, having chats with them about it. Really good way of doing it. I'm just looking in chat, Emma, as well. So Becky's put, what's interesting with resilience is that you see the following resilience literature, things that make a person resilient, Luther's psychological capital, hope, etc. And these things can apply to a team, as teams are just collections of individuals. But then there's also things relating to mechanisms which come from and are relevant to social interactions and making a team different. So there's kind of two sides to it. We've also got a comment about in multi-team meetings, 1 hour is a learning slot, which is a great example, isn't it? So yesterday we invited someone to talk about robotic process automation. Sounds great. Yeah, I went to Sheffield University once and had a look at their robotics department. It was incredible to see what was going on, to help some of the team learn about this. So lots of different ways in which we can help people to learn and to share, which I think is important. Emma, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Marcus. That was really insightful.